Okay, so moving on now to Amos, and Kirill did an excellent introduction as to what Amos will be covering now. He's the practice leader for the API ecosystem at Axiata Group, and this presentation dovetails very nicely into the realization of what Kirill presented. So just give me a second to find where his presentation is. Seem to have everyone but yours open at the moment. Okay. Here you go. Oops, sorry. And over to you. So you can use this, or we have a mic over there if you want to walk around. Okay, Amos?
Good. Thanks very much. Morning, everybody. As introduced, I'm helping create a horizontal layer across our group. I'm working with Kirill in the Axiata Digital Services. And my task is to effectively try and create an ecosystem, an enabling layer that will allow organizations to come and see us and plug in once, contract once, reduce the process of engagement and the opportunity cost. So I'm just going to go through a couple of examples of things that we've done and show you how we've got to where we currently are, and also some of the mindsets behind that. So obviously, from what Carol said, we recognize that OTT is evolving very rapidly, and we either need to partner or we're dead. So one of the key thoughts behind what we're doing is the ability to partner, and to partner quickly and efficiently. It's all very well saying it, but in fact we need to put a lot of things in place to be actually able to do that. So we have to evolve as organizations. There's an amazing amount of creativity in telcos. There are pockets of people. The first person you tend to engage with as an outsider is very creative, very innovative, totally gets it. Then it stops, because you have to go through an unbelievable process to get stuff done. You engage with 30 people plus on every single service you want to use. And by the time you've had 90 meetings and 18 months of playing around, you may get a result. So we've had to actually look at that. This isn't technology, although I'm going to talk a bit about technology. And so what we're trying to do is create effectively a collaboration layer, enabling as friction-free as possible a way of engaging. But what we've also had to do is work out how to reduce the friction internally. So I'll also talk a little bit about that. So one of the organizations within Axiata that is particularly innovative and very fast-moving is the Dialog organization in Sri Lanka. And in fact, the technology I'm going to talk to you about today and some of the things that we've done was actually originated in Dialog. So one of the first things that we did was to basically experiment. Let's get involved. Let's work out what that actually means, what it means to partner, what it means to open up the ecosystem, what it means to actually open up services, the applications on which we don't know about yet. In other words, a sort of fail-fast strategy. Let's just see, let's play, let's see what's going to happen, because we can't always plan something out with an amazing 400-slide document that sort of identifies the business opportunity to the nth degree. So we launched some services in Sri Lanka around a brand called IdeaMart. And we did that with a partner, and both the Dialog team and our partner, HSenid, are here to talk about that later. And there were sort of 4 different things that we launched here. One was a sort of idea apps, it's called, which is for people who have absolutely no coding knowledge, but they may have an idea. And so a sort of widgets that would allow them to create stuff relatively quickly. Idea Pro, which is raw APIs with documentation that for people who code and actually understand how to code. Idea Biz, which is sort of focused on enterprise. So long tail sort of has a slightly wider meaning for us, because there are a lot of small enterprises that could usefully use our services, to Carol's point. And then an app store to bring together some of the innovation that's occurred. And it's been really incredibly successful, and it's given us a lot of information and understanding about what we should do next across the group. So again, this is something that's going to be the subject of a more detailed deep dive later on in this show. But there's some good stats here. You know, about 2,900 plus apps, quite a large community, and we've engaged significantly with that community. One of the things that we had to do was to really help them, help us, help them, help us, help them, etc. And that was a very, very important part of this. A lot of engagement with universities, hackathons, you know, that are staffed primarily by us, but also by our partner, and a lot of API calls a month. It's worth noting that telcos have been doing APIs for years. We've enabled aggregators, we've enabled all sorts of different services. It's just that engagement has only been the domain of large organizations that have a neck big enough to wring. In other words, an organization that you can sue. And that's daft. And that's, to Carol's point, something we have to change. So Dialog was really a very success. It's very successful. It is very successful. And it is growing month on month. It's almost, you know, exponential, the growth. And the revenues are not moving the needle yet, but they will one day, because we are going to create people and find partners in the ecosystem through this sorts of initiative. And in fact, we've got a bunch of mini SIs. We've got coders that have totally embraced this thing, and we are actually introducing them to enterprises to help enable them quicker, partly because we can't do it quick enough, they can. So we have built our vision, and Carol's come in very refreshingly to start sort of, you know, bringing the whole group together to accelerate this vision. And we've created a small dedicated teams essentially to help do that. And the idea is to simplify, to reduce costs, because getting any sort of budget above $20,000 in a telco is super hard to do, right? To engage and evangelize, to create a sort of plug-and-play mindset, to be agile, because it's not cookie-cutter. Someone's going to come to us with something that's actually going to need a slight iteration of what we've got. We need to be able to do that really quickly. In fact, we should do it. We shouldn't say, well, you do it, and here it's going to cost you, and if you plug into this 9-step process, you may get a result if we think it's going to be okay. We actually need to help them, and obviously reduce the process. So that's what we've been trying to do, and the team is empowered essentially, which is great, and we are beginning to get pockets of people that are effectively responsible for multiple services within the opcos. So in looking at trying to emulate best practices from agile businesses, I mean, you just have to look at the Amazon story to realize that they said everything has to talk to everything else. We believe that everything has to be able to talk to everything else ultimately. And so we've sort of tried to create a layer that will allow us to do that. If you like, a modular internet enabling layer. And obviously one of the first things we have to embrace, which is quite difficult, is that it needs to be able to be cloud-based, and because the cloud can scale much quicker than you can do in your own infrastructure. But it also needs to be able to embrace our own infrastructure if needed. We've embraced an open source technology, which is a really difficult concept for some of the tech teams internally. But actually open source is better code because it's peer reviewed. It's stronger code. It's more agile code, and it's fed by people in the ecosystem. In other words, it absolutely talks to partnership. And this particular technology stack is absolutely brilliant. In my opinion, it's way better than anything else on the market that does what it does. And then we wrapped it up with various key components that are a requirement to run a successful sort of enabling layer. Obviously an API store with sandboxes and governance and all the rest of it, and self-service portals and customer anonymization capabilities so that we can deal with the really stringent data problems that we're having as telcos, as regulated organizations. Commercial module, obviously, and then admin. And we've created a bunch of APIs to start with, which we've used sort of common standards to do. We've embraced the GSMA standards because we are a GSMA organization, and there is some value in that. But what we're not saying is it's only the GSMA standard. If there's an API 1.1, sort of SMS 1.1 that does something slightly different, we can do that. We can keep the people plugged into the first one and then iterate for another partnership if we need to. And we can build them very quickly. We've plugged in some of these capabilities. We've replugged them into the IdeaMart solution. We've plugged into the GSMA ecosystem because we can, so we've just done it. And we've plugged into most of our operators. right? We're just about to complete that. End of December, we should be pretty much done and dusted, which is great. And then what we've done is we've created some reusable components. In fact, how we plugged into our opcos was by creating gateways that would allow us to put something into the opco and allow us to expose those services once, go through the pain of exposing it, all the processes around it, expose it once, and we call that a gateway. And then we plug those into the hub and interconnect. And the interesting thing about the gateway is it's a full API management solution in a box, so they can use it or they don't have to use it. And they're not going to use it all straight away. But what you now have is a very agile solution that can be used at a local level. And one of the things that we're quite conscious of is that this isn't group dictating a new strategy for the local organizations to embrace. It's the other way around, actually. We want to enable the local organizations to do their thing locally. IdeaMart, at this juncture, is a local business serving Dialog customers. But the key is, it was incredibly low cost, right? It's cost us probably less than a couple of $100,000 per operator to put this in. Right? Really, really low cost, virtually no friction whatsoever. So we did not have to go through massive procurement issues internally to pull this off. And it's very scalable, and so we deal with all of the things where you have to be telco grade and very robust and all this sort of stuff. Right? The baseline configuration will handle 500 transactions a second, which is fantastic. And it can be split between cloud and on-premise. And what we've done is connect to, this is effectively what it looks like at the moment. So we're plugged into the GSMA ecosystem. We're plugged into the telcos. 3 of them have a gateway. 1 of them already has a gateway, which is fine. Each of the telcos can have their own service provider ecosystem. And if they have a service provider that makes sense for a group position, then they can go through the hub and access the group, and vice versa. And of course, the other thing, and this is really important to Kairo's point, we think that there needs to be interoperability between telcos. In fact, we think it's an absolute prerequisite in this new world. There are common things that a mobile consumer should be able to expect with their service, regardless of which telco they're with. And there are 1 or 2 GSMA initiatives, for example, the vision for which are actually quite good. It's just a question of how we accelerate that so it actually happens. And one of the things we're doing is trying to deal with that. So we're trying to actually create a capability that will allow us to very quickly plug into another operator for a service. It might be advertising inventory, it might be sharing wallets, for example, all of which, APIs for which we're doing. It might be to partner to serve the IoT, M2M, an M2M initiative, right? So, and the reason that we've done the sort of cloud-based plug-in approach is that we can have a very quick connection with an operator without having to do a real deep integration. And we call this thing the Mobile Internet Fulfillment Exchange, or MIFE. So we've had to embrace a lot of new concepts to pull this off, open source being one of the biggest ones, and that's quite a big move. It's extremely modular, so that the system can adapt very quickly. We can do hybrid deployment, so it's both cloud and on-premise. And we can configure really fast. We can put a new service together in a month and a new API together in a week. And it's very low cost in comparison to any project that you do inside a telco. This thing does not come with a sheaf of blank change requests. It's something that you can do relatively quickly. And what we've decided to do, which we're actually announcing today, is open source the whole stack. So we're going to give this stack to the whole community. We're going to give it to the vendors, we're going to give it to the telcos. Because this stack is extremely capable. It's based on WSO2 technology at its core. We've created a telco variant, which has got various different adapters southbound, which will continue to grow, and hopefully the open source community will continue to help grow that. We've created APIs that can be used pretty much immediately, and it's got orchestration and other things that will allow us to innovate very, very quickly. And we've actually pulled this off effectively in the last 9 months, right? From ground up, the whole group connected, right? So we've decided to open source that community. It's going to happen early in the new year. It'll probably be Mobile World Congress that it is fully sort of up and running. But we're open for business. We're interested in partnership. We're interested in innovation, and we don't know what the innovation will be. We've just created a tool set that will allow it to happen, and a set of processes that we hope will promote that. There we go. I'm done. Good.
That announcement in terms of open sourcing that stack here first at TADSummit. So do we have any questions from the audience? One here in the middle.
So I have a question. So you have adopted the open source API management platform.
Mm-hmm.
Have you faced any issues with customizations or support? Because it's a production grade system with millions of APIs flowing through it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of your business partners would depend on the platform's availability as well as the frequency of change. Mm-hmm. So have you faced any issues like that?
Well, we've only just decided to do it, but what we've done is set up a whole bunch of processes internally. But we've had the primary technology in play against our core for 18 months. And we were able to test this because we downloaded the stack for free in its entirety, fully documented, WSO2 this is. So we've been playing with this for about 18 months. And we realized that every time we asked it a question, whether it was at the level I've described to you or whether it was a more deeper level, right, it answered that question, and it answered it better than anything else out there on the market. So we said, look, this thing works, it's allowed us to innovate, it's allowing us to change, and it's got enterprise-grade support. The availability is the same as anything that you would get in a proprietary stack. But critically, we know what's happening if something goes wrong because the code's there. It's not like a backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. It's like there. And an open source set of technology, the thing about open source is that it's in the people who built its interest to make it as good as it possibly can be. In a proprietary stack, it's in their interest to be jolly sure that it is their problem before they open it up and actually deal with it. So you're going to get problems that's solved in weeks or less, whereas with a proprietary stack, it could take you months of negotiation before you even start solving the problem. So we think that this is the way forward, and we think it's the way forward for innovation, because I say we don't know all the things that could happen, but what we do think is that everybody needs to interoperate.
And this isn't new. I mean, all the web service providers, it's their model. It's how they're innovating. So in a way, you're copying basically where the success model is.
Yeah.
Do we have Adam?
So you've plugged into the GSMA, presumably for distribution, marketing, to be able to sell this. How's that working? Is that driving any actual sales?
So here's the thing, right? The GSMA is a very interesting organization. It's actually an exact mirror of a telco, except worse. Right? That's the truth of it, right? But what they do actually do is make sense. It's just they don't know how to execute it. What we're trying to do is work out how to execute it, right? So the idea of open sourcing this, and this is for telcos as much as anything else, is almost like a franchise model, because one of the biggest problems with telcos is that if it ain't built here, then we're not going to use it. If it isn't with one of our vendors, we're not going to play with it. What we're saying is, here are our vendors, here it is, use it. Here are our telcos, here it is, use it. But it works, it connects. Why build or rebuild, again, the same thing? This stuff, this technology we've got is about 5 years old. It's all built on the same code base. We've got 25 modules that do really seriously powerful things on the same code base. They all talk to each other. You need to call that function, governance, identity, whatever it is, you can. We've got to change things. We've got to move much, much quicker than we're doing. This is not a fragmentation. It needs to be the opposite. Because the opportunity is above that layer. The opportunity is what we can do in the way that the actual users and the applications are going to evolve. It isn't about the baseline layer. It's not proprietary anymore. It can't be. The internet isn't. The Apache servers and stuff, they run this thing. I mean, I remember when the Apache server went up, and you could put it on a Linux thing, and it would work on a sort of 90 kilohertz server, and way faster than anything, you know, with some of the other systems. Way faster.
So let's show our appreciation for Amos. What is a breath of fresh air? Thank you so much.
Okay.